Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report. And today we are an honored guest of General Amir Avivi of the IDSF, the Israel Defense Security Forum. And I had the privilege of seeing the general in person at the May Gala in DC to celebrate Israel's 75th birthday. And he was gracious enough to come on to our show because we want to introduce the IDSF to all of you as one of our projects in our efforts to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, which to me are one and the same. The IDSF has wonderful programs in that effort, in that they examine the global conditions that are going on, how to protect Jews in Israel and elsewhere. And they're just a great organization headed by wonderful experts. And it is here we'd like to introduce you to their founder and lead, General Avivi. Welcome to the show. And please, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and how we can help.
Amy, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure. I was born in Jerusalem. I come from a family that has been living in Jerusalem for 15 generations.
Wow.
My family arrived to Jerusalem in 1620. They were expelled from Spain. They moved to Saloniki. And from Saloniki, they arrived to the old city. Of course, at that time, Jerusalem was only the old city. So they lived in the Jewish quarter inside the wall. As I mentioned, I was born in Jerusalem, but most of my young life was outside of Israel. My father was a diplomat, and we moved around. So I got to live in Italy 5 years, in South America, in Chile and Argentina 5 years, and also in Ivory Coast.
Wow.
I graduated from a British high school. And at the age of 18, after really experiencing a lot, of living around the world, I came back to Israel in 1997 and joined the combat engineers straight to the first Intifada. And I found myself in a very intensive period of time. I really enjoyed commanding. So I decided to pursue a military career. So I was a platoon commander and a company commander fighting in the different borders.
Wow.
And in April 2002, I became battalion commander and I got command of 800 soldiers. And I found myself straight into the operation Defensive Shield. This operation was an operation in Judea and Samaria, which basically included regaining control of all major Palestinian cities due to the terrible terror attacks that Israel was experiencing. I found myself with my battalion fighting 10 months, day and night, foiling terror attacks. It was very, very hard for the soldiers. They were very tired. And after 10 months, the command told us, you have 3 weeks to organize. And after 3 weeks, you are going back to 10 months more.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, unbelievable. It was really unheard of. It didn't happen before.
Right.
And I bring all my battalion together and I speak to my soldiers just before we start the 3 weeks. And I find myself asking them a very strange question. How many of you have ever been in Jerusalem, Israeli soldiers? Half of my battalion has never stepped foot in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And this was, I was shocked. I was really surprised. And then I asked the other half, how many of you who have been in Jerusalem visited the Wailing Wall, the Kotel, the old city? And I find that half of them have never been there. And I understand that my soldiers don't know what they're fighting for. So, I had 3 weeks, 1 week vacation, 1 week we had to organize the equipment, and only 1 week of training. Now, usually a battalion like mine needs at least 4 months of training. And we had 1 week.
Wow.
And I took a decision. We're not going to train, we're going to Jerusalem. And I took my whole battalion to Jerusalem, 800 soldiers, and we went to David City and reconnected to our history 3,000 years ago, to the days of King David and King Solomon. And we went to the Wailing Wall and the tunnels in the old city. And we visited also the Knesset. And then the last day, 800 soldiers sat at the president's house and spoke with the president of Israel.
Wow.
And when we went back to operate in Judea and Samaria, this was a completely different battalion. They excelled in combat to such an extent that after a few months, the chief of staff of the army called me and asked me, what's going on with my battalion? And I told him, sir, this is all about spirit. This is all about the connection to who we are. This is even more important than training.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a huge lesson for me. I understood really the value and importance of spirit in building up a strong nation, in strengthening our army. And I also understood that there is a big problem in the education system in Israel, a huge decline in the education of Zionism, in the connection to Judaism, especially in the secular school. And this is, this was really shocking to me. And then while I continued my career in the army, I was really following what's going on and understanding how big is the problem. And because of the way my battalion excelled, the chief of staff decided when I finished my position as battalion commander to appoint me his aide-de-camp in the office of the chief of general staff. So I found myself going from the tactical level, combat on the field, to the headquarters of the whole Israeli Defense Forces.
Wow.
Working, completely different. It's an amazing job. I was in charge of coordinating all the operations of the IDF for the chief of staff, the coordination with the other agencies, the Mossad and the Shin Bet and the police, the intelligence, the international relations. It was really amazing. And while I was in this position, in Judea and Samaria, we were after the operation and things were a bit starting to stabilize. While in Gaza, the situation was a mess. Explosive tunnels, rockets. Things were the same and even worse than they were before because we didn't really do what we did in Judea and Samaria. We didn't gain control again of the area. And amid all this mess in Gaza, one day the secretary of the chief of staff goes into his office and says to us, open the TV, you need to see this. And we open the TV and we hear Prime Minister Sharon saying, I decided to disengage from Gaza, I'm pulling out. And we were shocked. This was completely out of context. We're mentioning now in September 30 years to Oslo agreements, to the Oslo Accord. Really one of the most terrible processes Israel has ever experienced. And I remember, when Sharon decided to disengage, we were really surprised. He didn't even talk with the chief of staff before.
Right.
And we were assessing the situation, and the next week we had a cabinet meeting, and I was attending this cabinet meeting. And Sharon says, okay, I decided to disengage. What's the assessment? And I'm thinking to myself, usually you assess first and then decide.
Right.
But anyway, the chief of staff, Bogi, says to him, Mr. Prime Minister, if you disengage like that from Gaza, if you pull out and kick out 8,000 Jews. While there is all this terror against Israel, we will completely lose control of this place. It will become Hamas land, Islamic Jihad land, and Hezbollah land. And, the Prime Minister didn't really listen. The head of Shin Bet said pretty much the same thing to him. And he went on with his program. And following that, my chief of staff, after 3 months, didn't continue his position. The Prime Minister decided to end his position, and he brought a new chief of staff that was devoted to this mission. We left office. And then a month later, I hear suddenly the army saying, no, it's not going to be Hamastan, it's going to be Singapore. Peace will come out of this terrible decision. And I was shocked because I knew this wasn't the case.
Right.
I knew that simply the army is aligning to the new chief of staff. Everybody is worried about their promotions and salaries. And it was devastating to me. But also, and this is a very important point, all the generals that were organized and interviewing on the media and social media in the public sphere, all saying the same, yes, this will bring prosperity, this will bring peace, and it was all a big lie. And I felt that I'm witnessing a moment in the history of Israel and the armed forces, that there is a complete collapse. The cabinet, the army, all these generals, retired generals, all basically really not doing their job. And I felt that if we won't have a very strong and dominant organization led by high-ranking officers devoted to one thing and one thing only, ensuring the security and prosperity of Israel and the Jewish people for generations to come, without politics, without other agendas, with an understanding that national security is first and foremost about national values. It's about our Judaism, our connection to the Bible, to our history. It's about Zionism. It's about spirit, as I mentioned before, and it's also about really seriously researching and dealing with the terms, with what is needed to secure. And this is what brought me eventually, after I retired, to the decision to build up a new organization and a movement in Israel that will really deal with securing Israel for generations to come.
So you found in both your experience, dating back to your early days in the Army, through to your witnessing the politics and the events that happened in Gaza with the withdrawal, that there was a gap among the Jewish or the Israeli citizenship to understand why they were fighting and why they had the connection to the land. And once you restored that connection, as you did with your 800 in your battalion, then you saw a change manifesting, but then you saw that same gap all the way up into the leadership. Is that what you assessed?
Yeah, definitely. It's a combination, as you said, of really detachment from our core values on one hand, and also lack of knowledge to the extent that the politicians can basically sell any idea disconnected from reality or our needs as it might be. And the general public, the young generation, and many of the decision makers don't understand the repercussions of these issues. Nobody is really explaining what's going on. There is not a voice of reason, a voice connected to our values, but also a very professional voice to really bridge this gap of knowledge and values. And this is why I created the Israel's Defense and Security Forum, IDSF.
And you found that gap existed in the education system within Israel, the public education system, I'm assuming?
Yes, especially the secular one, because in Israel, the education system, you have more secular, more Zionist religious, more ultra-Orthodox. It's very different. Of course, you have also Israeli Arab education. But definitely, when we were starting to build the organization and thinking, how do we really shape hearts and minds of a whole nation, and not only the people living in Israel, but also the Jews in the diaspora,
right?
And strengthening connections with the wonderful evangelical communities that really need to engage with Jews who know who they are and are proud, and not get discouraged, because we as an organization, we know who we are.
Right.
And we have to build a strategy and really how to look in the very, very long term and build a good strategy. And we decided to base our strategy on 4 pillars that complement each other. One is a decision to be a grassroots movement and not just an organization of high-ranking officers. I founded the organization 3.5 years ago, and now we have more than 20,000 Israeli officers and commanders. But also we have youngsters, we have pre-army program kids, and we have students and young officers and fighters. So this is a very vibrant organization, grassroots movement, and this was a very important decision, because if you want to really win hearts and minds, you need a large organization, and we're only at the beginning. This is going to grow a lot, and I invite everybody to join. This is going to really be a global grassroots movement, focusing on Israel's national security needs and our Zionistic Jewish values. And so this is one decision. The other decision was that we really need to focus on educating the young generation.
Right.
So we deploy hundreds of officers to high schools, to pre-army programs. We educate them. We also provide a lot of content on social media, and we operate all social media, and especially we focus on the young generation social media. So I know, for example, that in the US, TikTok is not very popular, being a Chinese app, but Israeli youngsters are all on TikTok. So now we have to operate TikTok, and we do, or Instagram, and of course, and in this way, and also we have to adapt our very meaningful content to the young generation. So on one hand, we can bring 100-page research to the Prime Minister of Israel, and then really summarize this huge research to 1-minute reels on Facebook or shorts.
Takes a lot of skill and a lot of talent. But no, I think that's
exciting. It's
very important, and that's what we try to do on our side of the pond, as it were. I mean, we try to work diligently with young people, offering resources in the vein of what you're saying, which is why are the Jewish people connected to the land? Why is their presence there legitimate? Why is Israel a legitimate sovereign nation and deserve to have its existence and its sovereignty? And so we are happy to reshare those posts, assuming they're in English or they have the little translate sign, to our social media, because we want the young Jewish and Christians in America, even if they're not going to go into the IDF, I mean, even if the Jewish youth here isn't really planning to engage in Aliyah and go, but they need to be supportive of it, and they need to support politicians and policymakers in America who support that stance, because we're seeing a dangerous trend on our side that anti-Zionism is just creeping right on into our Congress, which had always been for almost 70 years, exclusively bipartisan in support of Israel and its security, and that definitely has wavered. And so through your programs and our viewers, I'm going to show you the IDSF website and give you guys the link, because it's important that you see the different facets of this organization, because our support of it is part of our mission to support Israel. So you were on the second of your four things, and the second one being
So we
education.
talked about education, and by the way, you mentioned content and the website, and I think one of our big challenges, we have very unique and very innovative content, and we are managing everything both in Hebrew and in English.
Wow.
And I'm talking about the research, everything that we write, the videos. This is a huge effort, and really translating everything to English and producing English content is a lot of work, and this is definitely something that we need help with, to support this effort, so we can really bring to the Jewish communities, evangelical communities, all of our content in English. This is a big issue. So we talked about two things. We talked about grassroots movement and education. But then you have to really also engage with the society. And the way to engage with the society is through media and social media. We are very, very, very active on national media in Israel, but we are also interviewing in international media. Every day we have between 5 to sometimes 20 interviews.
Wow.
TV interviews, radio interviews, newspapers. We have dozens of generals that interview on a daily basis. And we are a very important voice, because for a very long time there was just one voice that is disconnected from our heritage and history, that is mostly promoting retreats and concessions, a lot dealing with blaming Jews for everything that our enemies are doing to us. And this is not the kind of voice that the Israelis need. They need strong generals. They need to see conviction. They need to see brave people. And I can say that people are really excited, when they hear reason, professionalism, seriousness, values. This is what they need. And it's needed in Israeli media, and it's needed in international media, and it's also needed in social media. So with the eldest generation, of course, we are much more engaged on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, YouTube, and so on. And the last issue is really educating and working with decision makers, with the government, with the MKs, with diplomats, with Washington, with Europe. I can say, talking about the world, they really, really want to engage with us. They are very appreciative of the research we do, and the vast experience we bring, and especially due to the fact that we are, I would say, the younger generation of generals and officers. We are all still active in reserve. We are very connected to what's going on everyday basis. And this helps people who really want to engage and understand what's going on. And in order to be serious and work with the government, it's not enough to just be high-ranking or with experience. You need to couple this with serious research and position papers. And we have a research department with more than 20 researchers.
Wow.
And every meeting, everywhere we go, we always come with surveys, with research, with position papers. This also is a huge effort. And anybody who goes into the website will really see all of these different pillars I talked about here. They're all there with the research and the media and everything we do. And of course, decision makers, when they see a huge movement, they see how dominant we are on media and social media, they see the research, then of course they really want to engage and also sometimes get our help. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, there was an operation in Gaza, and while this operation was going, riots started all over Israel, and especially in the big cities like Lod and Acre and in Jerusalem. And Jews were not safe, and there was a clear need for a national guard for Israel. And we called for establishing this national guard, and the mission was given to the Border Patrol of Israel. And then they wanted to recruit a first brigade for the National Guard, but they didn't know how to get the people. So they came to us, and we did a national campaign, and in 2 weeks, we got them all the manpower they needed for the brigade.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we are asked many times, because of our dominance in the media and our social media outreach and so on, to help the government to push forward missions that will secure Israel. So now we are going next week to do another campaign like that, to build strong police forces in the Negev desert, where we have a lot of problems with the Bedouins. And we're helping secure this area.
Well, that's wonderful, because you prove that not only do you have the research and the data points, you have the experience to quickly put together a plan that will work, and then you make it work. And so that's wonderful that the policymakers or the decision makers are starting to recognize that they have you as a resource, the IDSF as a resource. And it's really important for us in America and in North America to be able to support that, right? So maybe it's financially, maybe it's sharing the content that's on your website in their Sunday schools, their youth group meetings, if they're doing a study on why Israel, right, or Israel's history and the modern day. There's a variety of applications that your content can be used for in our households and churches and synagogues and communities here in the States, that will generate young adults who grow up loving Israel and understanding the why behind it, and therefore will vote for policymakers on our side that will support the safety and security of Israel, and also at the same time support what you all need on the ground in Israel, which includes, your employee base, right? Having the resources and funds to pay the really smart people for their time to put together the data, make the effective video that gets posted on social media that reaches the hearts and minds of the young people, so that they in turn have the passion to do really the legwork on the ground, which is so important. And your experience, I'm sure we could have a whole nother episode where you just share really touching and vital moments in the field that demonstrate how that passion translates into effective fighting, combat in pushing back the forces that seek to harm. General Avivi, can you comment at all, just briefly, if you have the time, on how the global anti-Zionism, I know you have a paper on this on your website, but anti-Zionism outside the borders of Israel, whether it's among the Jews in diaspora or whether it's among the general secular voter in Europe or America, how you're seeing that manifest to the detriment of Israel and its safety and security.
Yeah, so I want to share with you, Amy, maybe a somewhat unique approach to anti-Semitism, and I'll start by telling you a short story. I mentioned that I graduated from a British high school.
Mm-hmm.
I arrived to this high school when I was 16. So I was pretty much the youngest, the newest pupil in school. Most of the kids were studying in this school from first grade, many years. And I was new, and I was an Israeli and a Jew. And the British system, I don't know if you ever saw or read the book Harry Potter. That's a good example of how a British school is run. It's built with houses. And these houses compete between each other all year round in every sport you can imagine. And there is activities inside the house. Our house is a big deal. And I arrived at the age of 16. At the age of 17, I was a deputy house captain, and at the age of 18, I was a house captain.
Wow.
Now, Jews in England don't get to be house captain. It simply doesn't happen.
Right, they don't rise up among the ranks so easily.
No, they don't. So for an Israeli and a Jew and a new kid in school in 2 years to become deputy house captain and house captain, this is really unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't give it much attention at the time, but then years later I thought about it a lot and asked myself, what happened here? How come this happened? And I could attribute it to maybe my natural leadership or the fact that I excelled in sports. But I came to realize that really that wasn't the story. The story was that I was a very, very proud Jew and Zionist. I really loved my country. And it really, everybody knew that. Everybody felt that. And this created a lot of respect. And I learned a very important lesson at a young age. When you respect yourself, when you know who you are, when you are connected, people respect you. And unfortunately, what we see today, especially in the diaspora, but not only, is Jews doing exactly the opposite. They think that if they will assimilate, if they will disconnect from Zionism and Judaism, people will like them. And it doesn't work like that. If you don't respect yourself, people won't respect you. This only brings even more, hate and anti-Semitism. You know that the moment in history, in modern history, when you had the least anti-Semitism in the world was after the 6-Day War.
Wow.
And Jews were at the peak. People respected them. Mm-hmm. This is human nature. This is how human nature works. So when dealing with that anti-Semitism, you can go and put a lot of efforts in fighting these anti-Semites, but they're not really going to change. We need to really put our effort on building up Jewish proudness and connection and strengthen the Jews. And by the way, also the young generation in the evangelical world. Mm-hmm. And this is the main mission. This is how you fight anti-Semitism, because what anti-Semitism is doing and what delegitimation is doing, and this delegitimation is led by the Palestinians. BDS is all Palestinians running it. It's really hurting the Jewish communities and really hurting the connection between the Jews and Israel. And this is devastating. We really need to strengthen this. And I can tell you that as officers in the army, the main thing we did all the years with our units is build units strengths and proudness. Because when you take a unit to combat, if you want them to excel and be strong, they need to be proud. They need to be really connected. So we really know how to do it.
Mhm.
This is what we've been doing for decades.
Right.
And we need to build this back. And I think that this unique know-how officers bring from Israel of how to really bring back the sparkle in the eyes, of people, and making them feel, proud and strong, and also giving them the unique knowledge they need to understand what's going on in Israel. And one of the very, very important messages we have is that our values are holistic. You cannot put a hole in them. The moment you play around with our values, it's like a dam where you do one hole and then you have water going out, and soon enough you will have another hole and another hole, and the dam will collapse eventually. This is how you go from strong Judaism and Zionism to post-Zionism. So people really need to learn to detach between their holistic values and practical issues. For example, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is a practical issue. It's not about values. What kind of solutions we can discuss? There are many solutions, by the way. Does it have anything to do with a deep connection to who we are and our land? No, it doesn't. And people don't get it. Mm-hmm. They mix their values with everyday problems or things we need to deal with.
Right.
And we don't mix our values with issues. We approach problems in a very analytical way, not giving up our values. And we have very out of the box and innovative ideas about how to deal with the problems that Israel is facing.
And the issues that Israel is facing are often complex enough to the average Israeli who lives there and faces them daily. And for Americans, we can't always wrap our head around the variety of nuances, but what we can do is support the organizations we trust, like the IDSF, to have their hearts and minds and researchers and fingers into that so that it can get properly analyzed, publish information, whether it's papers or videos that explain it to us. So we have to be proactive to go seek out, your work and your findings. And then, of course, we want to support it. And if that also means eventually having, hosting events with Christians and maybe Christians and Jews together to have your members come and do in-person speeches or visits to schools and houses of worship to ignite that firsthand passion and that sort of book knowledge between the history and the connection and these ideals and values into an actual person that has been there, seen it, engaged it, and overcame it. So that's one of the things we would like to participate in helping you with as far as that support to get your organization what it needs for the here and now, and also to grow. And I know your website addresses, what you do globally and your reaches into North America and Europe. But I just want our viewers and readers to be aware that the IDSF is, if you read their mission and their goals, it aligns so well with our organization, and that is why we are initiating a formal stance to support it. And that means in every way possible: prayer, financial resources, media campaigns. If we can reshare things, push them out, bring your papers to a study group, a school group, a high school history class, etc. That's what we want to do in order to help. And our goal is to help as much as we can. Is there anything else you need us to know besides going to the website and sharing your information? Is there anything else we can be considering so that we can continue to figure out ways to actually help?
So, Amy, connecting to what you said, we really want to bring our many experienced officers and generals to the evangelical communities and engage and brief and talk and share views. And so we definitely want to reach out and come and speak. Also, there are many groups who come to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
When a group comes to Israel and they want to do a tour, it's really important who explains things. And we're more than happy to brief along the borders, to take people to very unique places in Judea and Samaria that if you are not an officer, it's most likely you won't arrive there.
Mm-hmm.
To help facilitate, visiting maybe certain bases or getting insights that otherwise you wouldn't get. So really also these two activities, I think where we can work together and help each other, and to facilitate these meetings and have these officers talking, whether it's in Israel or in the States or around the world, and sharing our views.
That's a great point about if Americans and Christians are visiting Israel, because oftentimes tour groups and leaders and pastors are painstakingly trying to find the best possible tour and the best possible itinerary. And indeed, I would encourage those in our audience who are part of tour groups, organizing tour groups for their church schools or for their larger communities. You can always contact the Jerusalem Connection or go to the IDSF website. We'll share the link, and we'd be happy to help facilitate making the connection so that tour group can have that very unique vantage point, because when you get home from a tour like that, you have so much to share with your own community, and that furthers that long-term goal of creating a generation here and in Israel that has that value system and the connectedness to the history and understand, so we can support the connectedness the Israelis have with their land. General Avivi, I am so happy you took your time this afternoon to visit with us, especially since you have between 5 and 20 interviews a day. And like I said, I encourage our audience to go to your website, because the archives of papers and articles and videos are just a treasure trove of information, vital information, and there's always more to learn. General Avivi, please relay to your whole team our gratitude for all that you do, and be assured that we will continue this conversation and our connectedness so that we can help you achieve those goals and help you further your immediate goals on the ground just now.
Right, and thank you very much for the assistance and help. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Shavua Tov.